Nice. Yeah, so I mean, it's not unexpected that second year students wouldn't have a clear picture of their dissertation questions just yet. I remember that Bob Gibbons in MIT, he said, we don't understand what happens in the third year of a PhD program, but it's absolutely essential, and it takes 1 year. So I thought that was kind of funny, but it's true. Yeah, that's what third year is for. So what can I do to help you? You have any questions for me, or anything I can do?
So it's a question coming from me, who's been primed for job market related topics for over half a year now. So I was wondering if you have any advice for example, like Kyoju, who's on the market this year, or other folks who's gonna be on the job market pretty soon, specifically during COVID situation. So like your school like hired this year during COVID, right? And
Yes.
I think one of the things that was like pretty different from usual job market situation was that most of the schools did first round interviews, and then also like
True.
virtually, and also did like virtual job talks. So I was wondering, like, what kind of things like should students prep for, like, for example, first round interviews, and even for job talks, like what kind of things should be different?
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything really different about it. Obviously, well, I guess the one clear difference is that presenting a paper in this medium is a little bit different than presenting it in the front of a classroom. So you have to be comfortable with the technology and, arranging and rearranging the windows and screen sharing and that sort of thing. You also do maybe face the challenge of when you're giving a talk online, there may be people with their cameras turned off and you don't know what that means and that sort of thing, right? So whereas if you're presenting in a classroom, it's pretty obvious what's, when people are paying attention and when they're not. So it's maybe a little bit harder to get audience feedback in an online setting than in a classroom setting where it's it's live and you're in the classroom. It's kind of obvious if somebody's engaged or not engaged, and so that's why I kind of in my talk today I made extra effort to pause after at various points after slides to say, is everybody with me, or is anybody lost, et cetera, to make sure that at least I'm doing my part. I don't know if I'm really engaging them, but I'm at least trying. So I think that's one thing, but I can't really think of much else in terms of difference. Now, the thing that I would say in general is, and this took me a long time to learn in my career. I wound up being kind of disgruntled for many years because thinking that, here I am, I'm doing good research, why didn't I get the job, right? Why did somebody else get the job? And I'm doing good research. And I do a lot of kind of mental comparisons of my work to their work and that sort of thing. And what I've learned is it's not about the quality of the research per se. It's about fit. I could do great research, but if it's not a fit with the research that the people are doing at that school, then I'm probably not going to get the job. So no matter how good my research is, right? Kind of a dirty little secret is that, yes, I mean, I think all other things being equal, the faculty members who are making these job market decisions, yes, they prefer people with strong research and high quality work. But they also have a selfish preference for somebody who's going to help me with my research, right? So when I'm on making hiring decisions, that's perhaps one of my biggest concerns is and it's maybe a little bit broader than just me. I might be thinking about, which candidate is going to help my group most with their research, right? So me and my colleagues, uh, who among our group can this person collaborate with, right? Because we're looking for a multiplier effect. We're stronger together, that working together, than we are separately. I think most people, when they're looking at job talks and looking at job candidates, they're doing that calculation of, could I conceive of myself doing research with this person, collaborative research with this person, and could I conceive of this person doing collaborative research with my colleagues, right? Mm-hmm. And if the answers to those questions are no, chances are good you're probably not going to get the job. So my biggest piece of advice is know your audience, right? Get to know the faculty members at the school where you're applying for the jobs. Get to know their research, and come prepared to those discussions with some ideas about research projects you could do with each of them, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a meeting with you're interviewing at University of Utah, right? Okay, you have a meeting with Matt Higgins, you have a meeting with Todd Zenger, you have a meeting with Jay Barney, right? You come up with an idea in advance of, here's a research project I could work with Matt Higgins on. Here's a research project I could work with Todd Zenger on. Here's a research project I could work with Jay Barney on. And so when you get into those one-on-one meetings, you can mention those ideas, right? And then that will crystallize in their mind the idea that, oh, this is a person, I may not have thought of that idea for collaboration, but gee, isn't that person smart to have identified a connection between their work and my work that I didn't see, mm-hmm. right? Some hidden connection between their work and my work that I didn't see that could lead to a fruitful collaboration, right? So I think that's my main piece of advice, is take full advantage of the self-seeking motives of your audience by trying to identify good research opportunities for you to collaborate with each person individually, and bring those up during your conversations during the individual meetings. So, and that's no different, during COVID, online or in person, right? That's still important. Yeah. So I think that's, and just, definitely, I think some things I think go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Learn as much as you can about the school and about the group, have some reason in mind why you would want to work there as opposed to someplace else, right? Because the schools that are making offers, they're in competition, they're in a race with other schools to try to hire the best candidates. They don't want to waste an offer on somebody who's not going to take it, right? Because they're going to need to give you at least a 2-week deadline on that offer. And that's 2 weeks during which they can't go to their next favorite candidate, right? Mm-hmm. And so if they're giving you an offer with a 2-week, a 3-week, 4-week deadline, they're tying their hands, and they were not going to want to do that if they don't have some good reason to believe that you're actually going to accept. So have some rationale in mind of, here's why I would really want to work here as opposed to any of these other schools that I'm applying to, right? Here's what the benefit for me would be of being here in particular, rather than, these other schools where I also have job talks. Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, both of those things are just kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the other side and seeing it from their point of view.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it should be obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me, so I don't assume it's obvious to anybody. It's something I kind of learned the hard way.
And I think people are surprised by the amount of work you have to do to be able to say all those things. You actually have to study faculty's research and potentially talk to some of them actually before, if you know someone personally. So
right,
these things.
Right, or you may even know students of theirs, right, who could give you some guidance about, what's on their mind and how do they evaluate candidates or something like that. You may be able to find out about research projects that they're working on that are not yet on their CVs, right? That they're not yet public, and find ways to connect to those research projects, because that'll be something that's really active for them at the moment.
Well, it is very valuable tips because when people say research fit, I didn't know what exactly meant research fit because it can mean that should I do something very different to offer the new things to the group, or should I do, do something similar so that these people will understand what I'm saying? And now
Yeah,
it's become a little
I think there's
clear.
got to be a little of both, right? There has to be, you have to be at a place where they're going to speak your language, right? If they just completely cannot speak your language, that's a bad sign. But on the other hand, if you're simply duplicating all the skills they already have, that's not good either. You want to be able to bring something new. So I do think it's a little of both. So being able to say, here's what I would add to the toolkit that this group has. Here's what we have in common, but here's something unique that I can bring to the table. Often that would be a methodology, because young people coming into the field are often, on the cutting edge of methodology, whereas us older folks are not. So you may be able to say, hey, look, I'm studying the same topic as you are, but I know a lot about machine learning, or I know about how to scrape data off of websites or whatever, and I can apply those tools. Or I'm on the cutting edge of panel data or regression discontinuity or natural experiments or whatever. So.
And related to that, I wonder, like, if and only if you have more than one offers, then like, how do you think from this side should you approach to find the best fit, basically?
Yeah, I think if I'm in a negotiating position like that, I'm going to kind of try to figure out in advance which of the two schools I would like to go to, and then negotiate the best deal I can with the other one first, and then take that deal and to the school where I really want to go and ask them to try to beat it. Right. So, but the question is also more generally, how do you identify, what the best fit is for you? And I think once you've had a chance to talk to the people there and have those conversations about here's 2 or 3 research ideas I have that I could pursue with each of these people, and you can gauge how receptive they are to those ideas, right? Then that, I think, will give you some data about whether there's a good fit there or not. Yeah.
Thank you. Makes sense.
I just had one quick follow-up question on this
Sure.
whole market. So do you what is your, do you think the schools are hiring more or less? Is the demand more or the supply more? I'm kind of wondering if COVID has affected the hiring decisions and it's going to have spillover effects, into next year and the year after and things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there is an overhang, I think, of there may be an overhang of students who did not get jobs because of hiring freezes. And so there may be I know, that there are students who have been actively seeking alternative landing spots, temporary landing places. My own student, Anpu Mahalingam, is taking a postdoc position, for example, at University of Utah. And they're hiring 2 postdocs there, in fact. And I know, other schools like University of Florida are hiring postdocs. I'm hearing, I never used to hear at all about postdocs in our field, ever. But this year, there seems to be a lot of that going around. And I think that's where a lot of the students are landing more normally. And maybe this is occurring too. A landing spot for somebody who missed the job market might be a visiting position or a non-tenure track position somewhere, or just if finance is allowed, just simply staying in the PhD program an extra year. So I suspect that there's going to be an overhang of candidates next year who were unplaced, and that may continue to put a damper on the job market. But I'm confident that the job market will come back, You know, it may take another year or so, but it will come back. And you know, one thing I will say though is um, there seems to be a lot of demand for entrepreneurship, right? So if you can position your work that overlaps between strategy and entrepreneurship, that can help. You know, I think people who are boundary spanners also in general, not just strategy slash entrepreneurship, but boundary spanners in any sense, will tend to do, you know, maybe a little bit better initially in the job market because you have two audiences you can speak to and appeal to. So if you know, your work overlaps between strategy and HR, for example, as Russ Koff's work does, or if your work overlaps between strategy and org theory, you know, having the ability to speak to both of those audiences is helpful. And I'll say one other thing about this is that um, if you don't have that, and you know, I've been in schools where, like at Wharton, I was in the PhD program at Wharton, and it was a broad management department. It encompassed strategy, org theory, org behavior, entrepreneurship, ethics, whole HR, whole range of management topics. Basically, the entire Academy of Management, you know, in one department. Um, and that was the way the PhD program was at Emory as well. And I've also seen PhD programs like ours here at Purdue, which are more narrowly focused on just strategy. And I assume that that's the case for you at Minnesota as well, more narrowly just focused on strategy slash entrepreneurship. If you are, if you, I guess this can cut both ways. If you're from one of the broader PhD programs and you're applying to a more specialized department, you know, you have to make sure that you're able to speak their language well. And conversely, if you're coming from a more specialized department like you guys are, and going perhaps interviewing at a school like Emory or Wharton, or you know, where it's a broader department, or you know, like Ohio State, right? That's a department that encompasses management, you know, all fields of management, just like Wharton. You have to be able to frame your research in a way that's appealing to all the audiences, right? And articulate what the value is for them. So, you know, for example, when I presented this pair of papers at Michigan State last year, the OB part of the group was surprisingly engaged. I was not expecting that. But because it involved experimental design with this natural experiment, they were really quite engaged. So finding a way when you're coming from a more specialized program to a more broad, to speak to a more broad department, finding ways to relate your work to people who are in OB or org theory or HR, and make those connections is really helpful. I don't know. I can't. I'm not sure if I answered your question because I can't remember what your question is at this point. I'm embarrassed to say.
Thank you. You did. It was about the overhang of job market.
Yes, yeah, right. The overhang. Yeah. So I don't know. You know, I'm hopeful that things will come back, and I hope relatively soon. You know, one thing that's happening, of course, is you know. A shift to more online pedagogy, and this pandemic has certainly accelerated that. But even before that, you know, we were seeing a lot of schools like Purdue shifting away from in-person MBA programs toward more online MBA programs. So I would encourage you to, you know, to try to, and I guess you probably are having this because we're all kind of teaching online by necessity these days, but being able to demonstrate that capability is helpful. Yeah, so anyway, I'll shut up and take the next question.
I have a question. So if you don't get a nice offer but the funding is available next year, is it better for you to stay in your PhD program or go to a temporary positions like postdoc or teaching position?
So I would say I would prefer a postdoc over staying in the PhD program, especially if it's at a really good school where I'm going to get good mentorship and good opportunities to collaborate with good researchers. I was particularly impressed with what Utah is doing. They are consciously kind of scaling back their PhD program in favor of scaling up their postdoc program, on the theory that they can get better people that way. And they are really, with Anpu, they're giving him free reign, to pursue his own research interests, and to he doesn't have to teach. He can teach if he wants to. I think they're expecting him, like in 2 years, to teach maybe one course, and it's during the summer. So it's a really sweet gig. I mean, the only thing that was negative about it was the salary, really, to be honest. Other than that, it's a great job. Because he's got great mentors there who are really supporting him and wanting to help him along in his research. Other postdocs are not quite like that. Many postdocs require you to do most of your time working on somebody else's research. So I would be conscious about that. I think either way, I might still prefer the postdoc over staying in the PhD program for a year, just because it gets you exposed to more people, and that collaboration can be helpful. And I do think, though, that I might prefer to stay in the PhD program over having a very teaching heavy position, because there's nothing like teaching to get you bogged down and slowed down in your research progress. And and you really want your first faculty job to be at the highest brand recognition school you can, so I think it's worthwhile to, if you can't get the postdoc position, which is going to help you with your research anyway, to maybe stay where you are and get the research done so that you can do better the next year on the job market, I think. On the other hand, there's, I haven't paid attention to this because we recruit so sporadically, but the schools that are in the market every year, they know who failed on the job market last year, right? So if you didn't get a good job on the job market last year, that may impede you from getting interviews at schools that are at the kind of schools that are just constantly in the job market. So take that into account as you decide whether to go on the market in a given year.
Mhm. Thank you.
Like, what kind of research question or like research do you find most interesting when job market candidate comes up? Like I like, sorry, I'll I know it's like a very broad question, but because we're
Right.
talking about job market, and I was just wondering, like, outside of like fit and all that, what makes the candidate most attractive in terms of his or her dissertation, and what?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
I think one thing that's important for me is independence from the advisor, right? If if this person is presenting a paper that, if I saw that paper with only the advisor's name on it, and I wouldn't be surprised, then that's a bad sign, right? If it's a paper that you're working on with an advisor, but it's not something I would have expected that advisor to do on their own, good, right? It's demonstrating independence, right? So what I'm looking for is are you doing something that is really distinctive, that has your unique stamp on it, that is not simply a replication or a repetition or a variation on a slight variation on themes that the advisor has been doing for a long time. I want to see some evidence of independent thinking, so because your relationship with your advisor is is important to get you started, but you can't rely on that one person for your entire career, and shouldn't, right? You're being evaluated as you, right? And you know, you have to be able to show at some point that you're capable of doing research that goes beyond what your advisor did or could or would do. So that's very important to me. I mean, we had a choice this year between, you know, a couple of candidates, one of whom, you know, did research that was clearly, you know, independent research, different from the advisor, and one that was, you know, kind of similar to the advisor. And we went for the one who had the more distinctive, more independent research as their theme.
I was wondering, like, what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing research in a very well-established area like you did today, right? Like,
Yeah.
So again, it's a very broad question. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. No, I think the advantages of doing research in a well-established area are that you have a clear community that you're speaking to. There is an already well-known audience, and it's clear what's been said before, and it's clear what would be new. But the disadvantage is that it really has to be something kind of new, very new, right? You have to be, you know, reaching up to the upper branches of the tree to grab some fruit from up there. It can't be just low-hanging fruit. It's got to be something truly unique and truly kind of startling almost to get the attention of reviewers, of readers, of you know, people on the job market. So, you know, the converse is that if you're studying something that's new, you may have trouble finding the right audience for it, and you may have you know, you have to maybe pay some pioneering costs of you know, maybe even kind of creating an audience for it, doing a lot of extra marketing for it to get the word out. But on the other hand, it doesn't have to be so perfect, you know, that it doesn't have to be something that's so shocking and so startling, right? And so well executed, right? That's the other thing. If you're doing research on something that's been studied to death, you really have got to get the execution on target. You know, you've got to nail down all the measurement problems, the identification problems, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're studying something new for the first time, like, you know, very fast and loose, you know, methods can be satisfactory if you're studying something that's, you know, new for the first time. I think, for example, of, you know, Ned Bowman's work on risk seeking by troubled firms and the risk return paradox. You know, two extremely well cited papers that made a big impact, but had really just the most primitive statistics in them. So that's you know, one case because those were really the first papers on those topics. So he was able to get away with, you know, very, very primitive methodologies. So yeah, so I'd say that's the trade-off. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I appreciate your willingness to let me record this for my YouTube channel.